Good morning, students. Today we are going to do our first chapter, Footprints Without Feet, a Triumph of Surgery. Triumph. See, just notice the pronunciation of the word triumph. What do we mean by triumph? Triumph is a great victory. You can see what is a triumph. Triumph is a great victory over something, or a big achievement over of something. So surgery is the term for use for operation. So there must be something about some surgery in the story. So the triumph of surgery, victory of surgery. Let's find out what is the victory, and it is about what. After going through the chapter, we will come to know definitely about that. And the story is written by James Herriot. Let me tell you something about first of all James Herriot. He was a veterinary surgeon and belonged to Britain. He was born on 3rd October 1916, and along with surgery as his career, he also wrote. He also was a writer who used his many years of experiences as a veterinary surgeon to write a series of books, each consisting of stories about animals and of course their owners. So this a triumph of surgery is again such an experience of James Herriot, in which he is talking about a small dog named Tricky, and it is the dog is very much pampered and overfed means feeding more than needed, feeding the dog more than needed by his rich mistress. He falls seriously ill and his mistress consults a veterinary surgeon. Does he perform an operation? Does the dog recover? So operation here actually the surgery. So we will find out while reading the story, did the doctor perform any operation on the dog or not, and if yes, how did he do then, and if not, how did the dog recover. So this is the story about a dog who was overfed, means his mistress, because his mistress was very rich, so she used to think that the dog should not be malnutritioned, he should get proper nutrition. So she used to feed him every now and then after at a very short passage of time, means several meals during the day. So the dog had become very fat, and it had denied eating, and it was vomiting all over and again. So so the surgeon, Mr. James Herriot, he advised the mistress of the house, Mrs. Pumphrey. If you can see here on the screens, almost at the end, Mrs. Pumphrey is the main character. She was the rich lady. Mr. James Herriot advised Mrs. Pumphrey to just send the dog with him in his hospital, and so that he could treat him well. So she sent unwillingly, very much. She was very much unwilling to send the dog with him because she loved Tricky a lot. So the doctor didn't do anything. He just let the dog on the water diet. He didn't give him anything to eat because the dog was overfed. It was eating more and more stuff all through the day at Mrs. Pumphrey's house. So the doctor just leave him on the water diet. He didn't give him anything to eat, and after 2 or 3 days the dog started recovering from his illness. And then what happens next, let's find out while reading the story. Okay, let's move to our first segment, read and find out. Why is Mrs. Pumphrey worried about Tricky? This is the first question we are going to tackle. Number 2, what does she do to help him? Is she wise in this? What does she do? She means Mrs. Pumphrey do to help him. Him stands for Tricky. Is she wise in this? Means did she take a wise decision to do the things with Tricky? Whatever she did, we will find out in the story what she did with him. Who does I refer to in the story? I here refers to James Herriot, the author of the story, the writer of the story. Okay, the first paragraph, see here I have marked 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see the meanings here. So let's begin. I was really worried about Tricky this time. I stands for James Herriot, the writer of the story. I was really worried about Tricky this time. Tricky is the dog, Mrs. Pumphrey's beloved dog. This time let's find out why Mr. James Herriot was very much worried about Tricky. I had pulled up my car when I saw him in the street with his mistress and was shocked at his appearance. So one day it so happened that Mr. James Herriot was just going on a road and walking on a road driving his car on the road, and he happened to see Mrs. Pumphrey with Tricky, and he had to pull up his car. He had to bring his car near to Mrs. Pumphrey to have a word with her, because he had seen Tricky with her. I saw him in the street with his mistress, and I was shocked at his appearance, because the writer was very much shocked seeing Tricky in that state, in that condition with his mistress. He had become hugely fat and like a bloated sausage, with a leg at each corner. He had become hugely fat, means very very fat, like a bloated means excessive in size. Sausage is a food item, cylindrical food item. You can imagine a cylindrical food item with a leg at each corner, cylinder, and four legs at one leg, four legs at each of the corners, four leg at every corner, totaling four, one at each corner. So who had become very fat? Tricky had become very fat, and the narrator has been comparing Tricky with a sausage. See the pronunciation of the word sausage. Tricky has been compared with a bloated means excessively big in size, big sausage. His eyes bloodshot means red in color, and rummy means watery, stared straight ahead, and his tongue lolled from his jaws. Stared straight means he just looked straight, and his tongue was just hanging from his jaws in a very relaxed way, in a very relaxed manner. Lolled means in a very relaxed manner. Okay, next paragraph. Let's see here. Mrs. Pumphrey hastened to explain. Hasten means very quickly she wanted to explain it to the doctor. He was so listless, means lacking energy. He was energyless, Mr. Herriot. He seemed to have no energy. I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition, because he was quite lazy the whole day. He kept lying on the floor, and he didn't show any response. So I thought, I here stands for Mrs. Pumphrey, thought he must be suffering from malnutrition, means lack of nutrition he had. So I have been giving him some little extras between meals to build him up. So between 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, I have been giving him some little extra food between these 3 meals to build him up. To build him up means to make build his stamina. But some malt. What she was giving in between the meals? Some malt. Malt means barley, and cod liver oil. Cod is a kind of fish, and the liver oil of cod fish, and a bowl of Horlicks at night to make him sleep. Nothing much really. She knew it very well that she has been overfeeding the dog, and she somehow actually wants to defend here herself why she was giving that little extra food which was not needed by the dog, why she was giving the extra food to Tricky. So she is defending herself here against in front of the doctor, why she was giving him the extra meals. And did you cut on the sweets things that as I told you? And did you cut down on means just reduced or make something lessen, cut down something, cut down the quantity of something? And did you cut down on sweet things as I told you? I again here stands for James Herriot, the author, the narrator, or the writer. Did you here stands for Mrs. Pumphrey, and the doctor is asking to Mrs. Pumphrey, did you stop giving him the sweet things as I told you, as I instructed you to stop giving something sweet? Oh, I did for a bit, but he seemed to be so weak, I had to relent. Means oh, I did for a bit. Yes, of course, I tried for a bit, but he here Tricky, he seemed to be so weak. But I found when I stopped giving him the sweet food items, I found he was so weak, and I had to relent. I had to become less severe. I couldn't be so strict with his diet. He does love cream cakes and chocolates. So he here stands for Tricky. Means Tricky loves cream cakes and chocolates. So I couldn't be so severe with him. I couldn't be so strict with him. I had to give him. I can't bear to refuse him. I can't bear to refuse me. I can't say no to him. Refuse means saying no to something. I looked down again at a little dog. I looked down. James Herriot, looked down again at the little dog. That was the trouble. What was the trouble? Means Mrs. Pumphrey couldn't help giving him extra food, more food than he needed. So that was the trouble. Actually, that habit of Mrs. Pumphrey was creating a trouble to the dog. Tricky's only fault was greed, and Tricky was also greedy about those sweet things and about food, and it was Tricky's problem. He had never been known to refuse food. Means he had never said no to food. He had never been known to. Known to means it was not in his habit to say no to food. He would just welcome whatever you offer him to eat. He would tackle a meal at any hour of the day or night. Means whenever you serve him during the day or in the night, he would never say no to it. He would just go and grab it. I wondered all about all the things Mrs. Pumphrey hadn't mentioned, and I wondered means I kept on thinking about all the things Mrs. Pumphrey hadn't mentioned, and these are some of the things, some of the food items that Mrs. Pumphrey had just told me what she was giving him to eat. There were many other things that she was offering him to eat every now and then. So I was just thinking about means what extra she would have been feeding the dog, and then she was a little hesitant to tell me about those things because she knows that I would definitely snub her. I would definitely scold her for giving so much to the dog. So because of the fear of being scolded or fear of being snubbed, she was not telling everything to the doctor. So the doctor was wondering, James Herriot was wondering all the other things that Mrs. Pumphrey had not mentioned. Means she had not told him because of the fear of being scolded. Means the doctor would scold me if I tell him everything that I've been giving to the dog to eat. Are you giving him plenty of exercise? Now, next question from the doctor. Are you giving him plenty of exercise? Means, of course, you are feeding him much. Are you giving him exercise also in the same manner? Means, as much as he required to digest all this food? Well, he has his little walks with me, as you can see, but Hosgin is the gardener, had been down with lumbago. Lumbago is the pain in muscles and joints of lower back. So he has been suffering from muscle pain and joint pain for some time, quite some time. So there has been no ring throwing lately, means of lately means just the short period of time from the time they were talking, means nowadays, lately means nowadays, because the gardener has been down with muscle and joint pain. So the dog is not doing ring throwing exercise. No one is there to give him a ring throwing exercise because the gardener was down with muscle pain and joint pain. I tried to be severe. I again, James Herriot, the doctor, tried to be severe, means strict. Now I really mean this. This means if you don't stop him feeding over and more than what he needed, means it would be, if you don't cut his food right down and give him more exercise, he's going to be really ill. If you Mrs. Pumphrey, if you don't cut his food right down, cut his food down means just make his diet less and less than what he needed, and give him more exercise, he's going to be really ill. Tricky is going to be really ill. You must harden your heart. You must be very strict and keep him on a very strict diet, and you must let him follow a strict diet. Mrs. Pumphrey wrung her hands. She just squeezed and twisted her hands. Oh, I will, Mr. Herriot. I'm sure you are right, but it is so difficult, so very difficult. She set off. Means it was very difficult for Mrs. Pumphrey not to give anything to eat to Tricky. So she says, oh, I will means will here is showing the promise. She is promising Mr. Herriot that she will make it sure that she would cut down Tricky's diet and would give him exercise equally. She set off. She started head down. She just started walking away from the doctor, and took his leave, head down along the road as if determined to put the new regime means routine, a systematic way of doing something. So as if determined, as if she had just determined, she has just taken an oath, or she was firm about it, to let the dog follow a new routine, strict routine, immediately after the conversation with the doctor. I watched their progress with growing concern. The doctor was equally concerned. Concerned means worried about the dog's health. Tricky was tottering, moving very slowly in an unsteady way, because he was very fat, so it had become very troublesome for him to move fast along in his little tweed coat. Tweed means woolen coat. He had a whole wardrobe of these coats, means he had a number of tweed coats for the cold weather and a raincoat for the wet days. He struggled on drooping his harness. Struggled on. Why did he struggle on drooping? Drooping means hanging downwards in his harness, means why did he struggle to carry his set of strips and fittings, means so many things he was wearing. He struggled very hard to pull on, to just bear their weight, because he himself was very fat. I thought it wouldn't be long before I heard from Mrs. Pumphrey, and I was sure. I means James Herriot. The doctor was sure that it would Mrs. Pumphrey would definitely give him a call about Tricky's health very soon. Long before means very soon. He would have a call. He would have a phone call from Mrs. Pumphrey about Tricky's health. Means he is going to be really ill if she didn't change his routine. The expected call came within a few days. Mrs. Pumphrey was distraught. Distraught means very worried. Expected call means which was expected by the doctor within a few days, and Mrs. Pumphrey sounded very worried on the other side of the phone. Tricky would eat nothing, means Tricky had stopped eating anything, refused even his favorite dishes, means he's not even eating his favorite dishes, and besides he had bouts of vomiting, means rounds of vomiting. He is again vomiting, again and again vomiting. He spent all his day lying on a rug, panting. Panting means you can say not able to breathe easily. So didn't want to go for walks, and he didn't want to go because he couldn't walk. He was so heavy. He was not able to bear his own weight, so he didn't want to go for walks, didn't want to do anything, and he was just sluggish and slow. He didn't want to do anything. I had made my plans in advance because I means James Herriot knew that he would definitely get a call from Mrs. Pumphrey, so he had made his plans how to tackle, what to do to improve the health of Tricky. He had already made his plans. The only way was to get Tricky out of the house for a period. The only way, and the doctor knew that he could just treat Tricky by getting him away from Mrs. Pumphrey's house. I suggested that he be hospitalized for about a fortnight. Fortnight means a period of 15 days to be kept under observation. So I suggested Mrs. Pumphrey that he should be taken away from house for 15 days and should be kept under the observation of the doctor. The poor lady almost swooned, means she almost became unconscious, fell unconscious. She was sure he would pine, he would very much miss her and die if he did not see her every day. And Mrs. Pumphrey was sure that the dog would miss her terribly, and would die if he did not see her every day. I mean, he was so habitual of Mrs. Pumphrey that he would not be able to live without her even a single day. But I took a firm line. Means I had to take a firm stand. Means I was a doctor and I knew what to be done for the betterment of the dog's health. So I had to be very, very strict with my instructions and with my suggestion. Tricky was very ill, and this was the only way to save him. This was what was the way? This here stands for taking him out of Mrs. Pumphrey's house. This was the only way to save him. In fact, I thought it best to take him without delay. In fact, I thought it would be very, very much it would be best to take him out from Mrs. Pumphrey's house as soon as possible. So Mrs. Pumphrey, you can see here, and I thought it best to take him without delay, and followed by Mrs. Pumphrey's wailings. Wailing means crying, sobbings. I marched. Despite Mrs. Pumphrey was crying not to take the dog from her house, not to take the dog away from her house, despite her wailings, in spite of being her wailings, the doctor had to take the dog away. I marched out to the car carrying the dog wrapped in a blanket, and I Miss James Herriot. The doctor marched out, means just came out to the car carrying the little dog wrapped in a blanket. He wrapped the dog in a blanket, and he just took him out of the house, and he just went to his car. The entire staff was roused, alarmed. The entire staff of the house, means the servants, the caretakers, the gardeners, the gatekeepers, they were all alarmed, and the maids rushed in and out, bringing his day bed, his night bed, favorite cushions, toys, rubber rings, breakfast bowl, lunch bowl, supper bowl, means all the things which the dog needed during his day at Mrs. Pumphrey's house. The maids rushed in and out, that they were just rushing in and out for bringing his all stuff. Realizing that my car would never hold all the stuff, because Mr. James Herriot didn't have a very big car to hold all these things. He realized it, he just understood it. He started to drive away, and he suddenly started to drive. He very quickly started to drive away from Mrs. Pumphrey's house. As I moved off, Mrs. Pumphrey, with a despairing cry, cry means as if she had lost all her hope in life, threw an armful of little coats through the window. She managed to throw some tweed coats of the dog into his car through the window. I looked in the mirror before I turned the corner of the drive. Everybody was in tears, and before just turning the corner of the drive, he looked from his mirror, and everyone was in tears. Means the staff, Mrs. Pumphrey, all were just crying. Out on the road, I glanced. I just had a quick look down at the pathetic, sad, pitiable little animal, gasping, panting on the seat by my side. He was gasping. Why the little animal? Who was the little animal here? Tricky. He was in his car, and why he was gasping, why he was panting, having heavy breaths. Why? Because he was very fat. He was not able to breathe in easily. I patted his head, and Tricky made a brave effort to wag his tail. Wag means to shook or sway or swing. See, because it is to infinitive, I should have written here first forms. Otherwise, wag means swung, or you can say swayed or shook. Poor old lad. Lad means boy. Oh, poor old dog. No, we can't call a dog a boy. So poor old dog. I said, you haven't a kick in your in you. You haven't a kick in you. Means you can't respond quickly, but I think I know a cure of you. But I think, I stands for again James Herriot, the narrator. But I know. How can you be cured? Means I know your cure, and you will be all right very soon. So for this session, that's all. In our next session, we will read out the remaining story. How did he cure him? How did he just treat him? And the condition, the psychological condition of Mrs. Pumphrey, and her reactions in the absence of the dog, etc. We will read in the next part of our chapter. So thank you very much.